My favorite thing about the forehand in disc golf is that I can look exactly where I'm throwing. All I have to do, keep my eyes focused this way and execute the shot. Compared to the backhand, you know, you're sitting here and you're turning, you're looking, and you kind of lose sight at this point. It's harder to hit gaps, especially when you have a lot of trees in the way. So that's why I want to talk about forehand basics today. I figured we'd throw one backhand for fun. Let's talk about the forehand. This is one of the most important shots in disc golf. If you don't learn how to do a forehand, you're going to be leaving yourself with a lot of trouble. Getting understable discs to flip up and over is a lot of variability in those discs. So I prefer keep the game simple. Throw over stable discs, pick a point you know it's going to come back left, and especially in the wind, throw those over stable discs. So if you are learning how to do a forehand, these are the basics, the tips that I've learned after 6-7 years of playing disc golf. I want to talk about grip first, because this is one of the most common issues I see with disc golfers as they're getting into throwing forehands. It's not super easy, but there's kind of like two different grips that I would recommend. There is just like the stacked, which for me, putting my middle finger up against the top of the flight plate and the wing of the disc itself. So that's what it looks like. This one is very helpful if you're throwing flat or hyzer shots with a forehand. I do something a little bit different. I use a split grip, but I have massive hands, okay? For me, like, I'm pushing way past, the nipple on the disc here. So for me, I feel like when I throw chop forehands, flat shots, I hit gaps better whenever I use a split grip. So try both when you're starting out to figure out what works better for you. So you got your stacked grip and you got your split grip. For me, I kind of have like a little staggered step thing. I don't even know what you would call it, but you don't have to walk in too fast. Notice I'm not pulling the disc all the way back here. If you really wanted ultimate power, you could probably learn how to swing all the way through, but just for me, I do struggle trying to push the forehand too far. So even for driver shots, a very similar motion. You can put so much torque and speed with not a whole lot of movement. The less variables you have in disc golf, I think the better. Now I want you to think about, if you've ever played baseball. I played catcher for like 15 years. All right, I'm in my position, get the disc. Let's say I'm throwing out the guy at second base, catch it. It's a very short throwing motion. So if you're a baseball player, I'd highly recommend going with like the split grip. You think about the baseball, how you're throwing it. You're coming over here with you're like that 45, 30 degree slot angle with the arm. But the problem with disc golf is, sometimes you're coming down here and swinging. It's kind of hard to do that. But if you're a baseball player, feel like you can be an athlete, try to throw it like a baseball. And the way to get yourself in this throwing slot, even with football, I played football for a long time. Throwing that football, you're gonna have that like training motion of throwing the disc, where if I throw it like a football, that is a chop forehand. That's one way to throw a disc, and that's fine. It works out well. We ended up right behind the pin. So when you are throwing hyzers, I'll change my grip a little bit, and I'll also throw a little bit of hyzer release. Basically take your body and just bend over to where you're throwing it for hyzers. So, a lot of different techniques with forehands. I would highly recommend, if you're throwing forehands, Get very, very flat, overstable discs to start with, then start adding in some flippier discs into your bag. I would recommend high wing, which means like the top of the disc, the parting line, is higher up. Fits a little bit better. Flat discs handle the torque better as well. But yeah, that's what you got to figure out, is like, where are you comfortable with your grip? Where are you comfortable releasing? Do you like to be a hyzer player, flat, or are you going to be a chop forehand guy? You need all of them, to be honest, to do really good disc golf. But just experiment around and figure out what works for you. You'll see some other form on how to throw the disc. You'll see Paul Macbeth doing this. I'll show you kind of what that looks like. There's nothing wrong with that. If you've never thrown forehands before, you might want to start off with that motion. Kind of gives you a starting point here and a process to start with. So that's something to think about. Otherwise, you know, there's some interesting styles out there. I'll try to mimic. I played with Adam Hammis a couple weeks ago. He actually won Waco, doing pretty well. He's got a pretty interesting form. I don't know if that's actually pretty close to him or not, but everybody's got something a little bit different. Figure out what works for you when you're throwing your forehands.